All right. Good morning, Teach Better family. Ray Hughart in the house as we just got done with a fantastic and super long conversation. And we actually went beyond the time this morning, Ray, on this topic. So it was pretty fun to see everyone. We had a big group this morning talking about politics of being in the middle. And this topic came from our Facebook group. So if you are watching and haven't joined, make sure you jump in there. We are this month taking suggestions for topics. We're not doing like an overarching topic for the month. We are trying to pinpoint different things that are occurring on the campus and in your district. And today, this topic was like the highest voted one on Facebook. It's
I think it
crazy.
was great because it was November 7th and a number of different states had elections. So talking about being, politics of falling in the middle, I mean, this was really in line. So thank you to our community for making that magic happen.
Well, it was funny because we did talk about politics and voting and what's going on in districts. Some people have PD days today due to voting and what's going on campuses. So it was a perfect transition. And Ray, you learned quite a bit about just the voting process this morning.
I did. I had to tell you, friends, if you have not tuned in to an admin mastermind, I highly suggest it because every week's different. There's always different people there. It feels like there's hundreds of administrators that keep this on their calendar and pop in when it's most convenient for their schedule, which is absolutely the vibe. We all adopt that mentality. But today specifically, I learned more in the first 6 minutes about voting in the United States than I ever had before. And it wasn't a conversation of who to vote for. It was not like a political debate. It was just facts, really interesting information about poll stations. I mean, usually the first 10 minutes are just goofing around and catching up and intros. And shout out to Alex Valensic and all the other amazing educators that taught me about polling stations today. I will forever be changed.
That's awesome. Yeah, there
Yeah,
was a lot of fun information. And so, like I said, it kind of led to the first question. So, Ray, I asked just for specific situations of what's going on campuses and districts as far as directives or initiatives that are being led, and just kind of the perspective of teachers and staffs on a campus. Because as we know, sometimes we get these top down initiatives from district leaders, and sometimes there's support, sometimes there's not, and then there's also the perspective of teachers, and obviously they have a lot on their plate, and sometimes they agree wholeheartedly and sometimes they don't. And so as a building leader, you have to kind of navigate between the two. And so do you just mind sharing kind of the concerns that were brought up from the group?
Yeah, no, I loved this conversation. I think it took us a lot of different directions because we not only were talking about being relatively stuck in the middle when there's a decision that you are hearing from the top down, but also need to implement as an incredible leader inside your building for your staff, but also the concept of what are those initiatives and do we even agree with them as a group? So I got a lot out of that conversation. The one thing I'd love to hear from you though, Josh, is with your role having been in this circumstance probably too many times to count, did you feel like there was a suggestion that you felt most connected to with your background?
Yeah, I think multiple leaders were talking about inclusion of special ed students, having differentiation within the classroom as far as our high needs kids, making sure that the teachers had support from not only district leaders, but then also from admin bringing in training and whatnot, and all of those things I've witnessed, I've gone through. And so I loved just the part of giving a platform to the campus teachers and staff as far as like, hey, here's a forum, be transparent, and share the fears that you have with this initiative that's being provided to you by the district. I thought that was a great starting point.
I really enjoyed that. And there were two key things for me that bubbled up during this conversation. One is my father, who I greatly admire. He has a little post-it note on his desk. And ever since I was young, he always has had this post-it note kind of taped to his computer. And it says speak to the issue. That's all it says. It's a post-it note. And this was very much in line with that concept that you can't actually support staff with something unless you understand the perspective. And most importantly, the fear is the issue. You need to know what your staff is concerned about. And you could try and pinpoint that with just your intuition, knowing your staff, but in some regard, it still feels like you're playing darts, trying to hit the right point. So I loved the suggestion of the survey to try and better align and identify what the fear is, so you can really hit that hard before you get into the meat and potatoes of the work that you got to get into.
Yeah, for sure. And typically, and this was stated also in our conversation, it comes down to several things like teacher capacity, right? As far as a lot of their time, their schedule, as far as their ability to work with diverse learners, and then also just deficits in their teaching. And sometimes the most passionate and adverse conversations that occur, it's due to their fears of the inability going forward with the task or the initiative.
Well, and we deal with that constantly, Josh, as you and I are out working with school districts around the US and Canada specifically, is the first step before actually working with a staff is kind of creating a culture of, yes, we have learning to do, right? I mean,
Mhm.
regardless of the topic. It's funny in the grid method presentation that I know so many of us have done. One of my favorite transitions that we have is a poll that we ask whoever is participating. We ask the attendees, and it's multiple choice to make it really, really, really easy. And it just simply says something along the lines of, during a traditional lesson in your classroom, whatever that looks like, whatever kind of teacher you are, how many students do you reach? And it being multiple choice gives so many options, right? It's like, I don't know. Okay, well, we can talk about that answer and why that might be the case. I'm pretty sure B and C are some students, and then most students, and then the last option, which I think is D in the tier there, is all of them. And what inevitably happens, for those of you who may not have been in a training with us, is people fall into that B and C category. During a typical lesson in my classroom, I reach some of the students, or I reach most of students. And teachers that say they reach most of their students feel really good about that. And they should, right?
Mhm.
Most of your students, I mean, geez, if we have 36 kids in our classroom and we're planning lesson on lesson on lesson, I mean, hey, it feels pretty good. But the reality is, and we have this conversation with them in the presentation, you have like 10% at the top that, you probably should have differentiated more and given more enrichment to. You have about 10% at the bottom who came to you so far behind, and we just need to do our best to reach them. But one of these transitional, sorry, I got dogs barking. I apologize. But one of these transitional moments then is the conversation around, as I'm losing my train of thought, is we didn't agree to be B minus teachers, right? I didn't
Yep.
agree to only reach 80% of my learners and consider that a success. So sorry for the dog interruption, but it was interesting to have that conversation about having those kind of outlier students and not necessarily accepting the fact that we may not be servicing them well day to day.
I think your puppy was just encouraging you to speak more on this topic and that they agreed with what you were saying.
That must have been it. Shout out to Harvey and Alfred, who are passionate poodle educators.
Well, they were in attendance for the admin mastermind also. So,
There you
no,
go.
I think what was discussed, I think Chad Strowski was talking about this, very similar to what you're saying, Ray. It was just not teaching to the middle, right? That's kind of where we land as teachers typically, and that's not what we should be doing each day. I know the grid method obviously allows that where you're hitting all learners. And I don't know if you want to speak on that, Ray, or not, but I know that's what you're doing constantly. You were just in California the other day, but just working with teachers to help them understand that you know we do have diverse learners. We have people all over the spectrum, and we can't just go right down the middle.
Well, and I think that, I could sit here and of course preach the grid method, friends. If that's anything you ever want, I mean, hit me up on social media. But the reality is I don't care what framework you use. I don't care if,
Yep.
you find something that looks better, feels better, supports a teacher better. To me, that's a huge win. Here are the basics. You want to make sure that when a teacher is struggling and has identified a learning gap, that we give them as much support as possible. And what I personally just enjoy about the grid method, having been that teacher and work with those teachers daily, is that I like that the grid word's a framework. The grid method's a framework. So it gives this sense of of kind of like parameters that exist in place. And then as you move throughout the framework and get to know it better as an educator, there's so many rules that can be broken, which fosters so much creativity and innovation and allows for the teacher personality to come forward. So trying to find some sort of system, whatever that is for you, or if you find something else, that's great. Although I love the grid method, but finding something that gives your teacher some comfort, some security, and then as they master that skill, loosening up and ensuring that their teacher personality and their teacher, the passions that they love, the reason they became an educator don't go away because you gave them too much of a restrictive format.
All right, Ray, we're going to end on this question. This was actually asked by someone in the group for admin masterminds, and it was just like the next step. So they asked, what are some effective ways to get help from the district without being seen as being difficult or against the initiative? And that's really hard because you want to do your best as an admin and do whatever the higher district positions are asking you to do. At the same time, you have the needs on your own district. So will you just share what was discussed as far as effective ways to get help?
No, because you were so much better at this question. Don't throw this at me. We want to hear your thoughts on this. I knew that you were going to
Okay.
throw this one at me. And this was something that I knew you knew how to answer. If you're in the audience right now, either you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on Teach Better Talk podcast, we need a little like shame on Josh. He's throwing me a question. He actually did a great job supporting an admin mastermind. Josh, this one's all you.
Okay, well, you also experienced this because Katie also chimed in, but being the beta group, right? So being the admin and the leader that gets ahead of the initiative. So we tried to do this. I was in multiple districts, multiple campuses, and thankfully we always tried this out and were successful of volunteering to try and get ahead of it because we knew when it was going to be rolled out by the district, and no fault to the district, this just is natural. There's going to be hiccups, there's going to be things that you need to work through. And we figured if we could be the first to try it and work through all the issues and have the teachers voice their opinions, that we knew the rollout process was going to be better being that beta group. So I know other people have done this also within the group and found success. So I wanted to leave that out there for everyone because I think that is the way to do it. Sometimes you can't always, sometimes you get things last minute like, hey, you got to do this in 5 days, which is difficult as a building leader. But if most things are rolled out and slow rolled out, so if you can get ahead of that and be the beta group, that's always successful.
I love that. And if any of you are experiencing that beta group mentality, reach out to us. We'd love to talk through some ways to make that as supportive for your teachers as possible.
All right, y'all. So I'm going to throw in conversation starter for next week as far as finding a topic on our Facebook group. I know, Ray, I didn't change this, so it's going to be super long.
Oh, no. This is the same one I made fun of last week.
I know, and I didn't change it. So I'm just making note of that. This is a Facebook group for the Admin Mastermind. Of course, if you're jumping on YouTube, this is the first time you're seeing this, and you want to join the conversation, of course, we're every Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern. Ray's doing something right now.
I know. I was like, I'm trying to change it, but I don't even know that I can. Why don't I know anything? Wait.
Teachbetter.com/mastermind. And on that page also.
Oh, it's still, wait, I thought I fixed it. No, friends, help me. Hold on. I got this. Hold on. Everyone take a deep breath.
Hot mess express around here.
No. This is good meditation. Everyone take a deep. How do you save it? Enter.
There you go. You just did it.
Woo! Hey, everyone, check out this beautiful link.
It fits on the screen.
Look at that. Look at that. As the two people on the team that do any sort of creative anything, we're amazing.
It shouldn't have taken this long, but all right, y'all. It was great to have everyone there this morning. Fantastic conversation. Can't wait for next week. And as far as the topic goes, I don't know what we're going to talk about because I'm going to reach out to you and we're going to be discussing what are the needs of your campus, your district, and I cannot wait to see everyone again. Ray, thank you so much for not only being at Admin Mastermind, but joining me for the recap.
Love it. Thanks for the invite.
All right, y'all. Have a good week.